Hi, welcome to my very first live stream. My name is Beth, and I'm the sewing pattern designer and blogger at Sew DIY. And in today's video, we're going to be sewing the Lela skirt. Oh, hi, Marta. Nice to see you. I'm going to try to keep up with all the comments on here and answer any questions that you have. And I hope it's just really fun. So the Lela skirt is an elastic waist skirt. I'm wearing one right now. This is view C and it has the curved pockets, but I will be sewing view A with the inseam pockets today. Let's see. So I have everything cut out already so that we can kind of just get to sewing really fast. There is a front piece and a back piece, and there are 4 of these little pockets and 2 waistband pieces. So it's pretty simple. It's a really great pattern if you just want to sew something fast or if you're new to sewing. So I have my inseam pockets here, and I've gone ahead and I finished the top and curved edges of the pockets. I just used a zigzag stitch on my regular machine, and you can do a zigzag, you can use pinking shears, you can use a serger, you can use other overcast stitches that are on your regular machine. What I like to do when deciding how to finish my seams is just get a scrap of fabric and test out a bunch of different stitches. So I actually have a video here on YouTube about how to do this. So I'll try to add that to the show notes later, or you can just go look on the channel for that video about different ways to finish your seams. And the reason you want to finish your seams is so that they don't unravel later when you're washing or wearing your garment. So your garments will last longer if you finish the seams. So we're going to start off by attaching our inseam pockets to the front and back pieces. So let's see. Okay. I'm using just a rayon, a light fabric. This pattern works with cottons, linens, rayons, just kind of medium weight to lightweight fabrics. You don't want it too heavy because you are going to kind of scrunch it around your waist with the elastic, so you don't want it to feel too bulky there. I really like to wear this skirt in the spring and summer, so it's really nice when it's in a lighter weight fabric that has some breathability to it. So I'm going to get my pins, and we have 4 pockets that we need to sew on. So let's see. We want to do it right sides together, and your pattern piece will have dots and notches for you to line up. So the one thing that's a little bit different about this pattern is that I have you attach the pocket starting just 1/8 of an inch below the top of the skirt. So I'm going to just put a couple pins in here and I'll show you. So you're going to pin your pocket on, and you can use your notches to do this. I get kind of lazy and forget to do my notches, but this is the top of the skirt, and so you'll just want to have the pocket placed 1/8 of an inch down. And this is just so that you don't have to trim it away later, and you're going to have less bulk in your waistband seam. So this pattern uses a 1/2 inch seam allowance, and let me get my seam allowance guide set up here. All right, so I have a video about this too. I'm just going to take my ruler and put it underneath the presser foot, and I'm lining up the 1/2 inch mark with my needle. And then I'm going to take a piece of washi tape, and I put the tape down, and it's going to be my guide for the seam allowance. Okay. Oh, it's hot in here today. It's so I'm actually sewing in my kitchen today because my sewing room gets really hot when it's warm out, and it's about 83 degrees today. So I'm down here in the kitchen where it's a little bit cooler. Okay, let's start sewing this pocket. And I'm just using a straight stitch. Let's see, okay. And you will do a back stitch. Just try to go really fast. Okay, and then back stitch, whoa, at the bottom there. And then we'll just repeat that for all 4 of our pockets. Okay, and if you have any questions, you can just ask them in the little chat box. Try to answer them. Okay, I'm gonna try to do my best to eyeball this. So if you're not familiar with this pattern, I first designed it, I think in 2015, and then I re-released it last year with expanded sizing and additional views. So this view that I'm sewing right now is the original of the skirt. And then when I expanded it, I added about 4 sizes and 2 additional views and an additional length. So the current pattern, you can mix and match it for a total of 18 different views. So it's really versatile. It's pretty easy to adapt. So here we have our front of the skirt with our inseam pockets, and we're going to attach pockets to the back of the skirt now. So if you don't have this pattern yet, you can get it in my shop, and there's a link in the show notes for that, as well as some links to other things like the sew along. I have a couple other videos about sewing parts of this skirt, how to select your size, some tester photos on the blog. This skirt has 6 inches of ease at the hips. So in that video about selecting your size, it'll give you some advice about deciding how much ease you like to have in your skirt. Whoa, my reverse goes a little bit fast for me. Okay. I haven't been sewing with this sewing machine in a while, so I'm kind of getting used to it again. You know, it's kind of like when you get a rental car and you're not used to driving it anymore, or you're not used to driving it. So but this machine, I also have a link to this in the show notes. This is the Brother CS6000i, and it's a really basic introductory machine. And oh, hi, Carolyn. Thank you. So glad you downloaded the pattern. So this is a really great basic machine. I used it for like 10 years as my main machine, and it costs like $160. So I definitely recommend it if you're new to sewing and just want something really basic and affordable. It's also really lightweight, so it's very portable. Okay, almost done attaching all these pockets. Back stitch, and then what I like to do, this machine does not have an automatic cutter, So when I'm going to pull my threads away and cut them, I pinch right on the seam at the ends of the threads and pull them away because it just makes it a little more stable. And then I can clip right by the threads so they're trimmed right down. Sometimes if you just pull it away, it can pull at the seams a little bit and get a little funky. So now that we have our pockets stitched on, we can press them. And I have this little ironing board right here. This is just a little sleeve board. So maybe that'll be a little bit easier to see. So what we want to do is I have this face up and I'm pressing the pocket away from the skirt. And I will do that for all of the pockets. So you kind of end up with like little ears off your pockets. So the other views of the skirt have cutaway pockets, and one is a curved shape and the other one is a slanted straight shape. And I'm just doing a mini length for this skirt. So let's move our ironing board out of the way and see if we can kind of see this here. So I'm going to, no, this is going to be, okay, I know it might be a little funky. So we're going to lay our front and backs right sides together. And let's see. Okay, so we're going to match up along here. Actually, forgot a step first. Before we sew this side seam, we want to finish this edge. So I'm going to turn my zigzag stitch on again because I've already finished my pocket edges, and now I'm just going to finish right down here. So I'm going to finish the pocket and the skirt side seam together on all four sides. Okay. Let's see. And I'm doing a length of 2 for the zigzag. Right. And I'm doing the curved edge, so I just zigzag down until it starts to curve at the hem. Trim that away. And do it for these other 3 sides. Oh, this wasn't feeding very nicely. And try to just pull the threads and see if it'll come through. So it's not cooperating very well. Okay. There we go. So as much as possible, I like to finish my side seams earlier so that while I'm sewing, I don't get the edges fraying a lot. Because sometimes if you wait until the end, you're going to get a lot of the threads just, fraying and pulling away, and kind of, it makes a mess. So as much as possible, I try to do the finishing that needs to happen right up front. All right, just one more, and then we can stitch our side seams. Let's pull that out of the way. The other thing, or the other reason I like to finish side seams or seams early on in the sewing process is if you're using a serger and then try to finish your seams after you've already stitched it, you can accidentally serge through part of your garment that you don't want to serge. So I feel like it's a little bit safer, especially when you're using a serger, to finish your side seams before stitching, or finish your seams before stitching. Oh, let's see. Okay. All right, I have a whole bunch of threads here. All right, now let's do our right sides together and stitch up our side seams. Okay, pull this down a little bit. So we're going to start. So here I have the top and or the front and back together, and you want to get things lined up, your side seams and the edges of your pockets as much as possible. So we're going to stitch from the top edge of the pocket down around this curve, and then down to where the square marking is in the pattern. So one place I always like to make sure I get it matched up is there's a little dot here in the pattern, so you want to match up that, which is at the bottom of your pocket. And I like to put a few pins in just to hold everything together. I know some people are sewing rebels and don't use any pins at all. But they're kind of a security blanket for me. So I'm just going to pin these side seams together. And then one thing I like to do, if I need a reminder of where to stop stitching, I will put 2 pins in. So then I'll just know, like once I get to 2 pins, that's where I need to stop. Okay, so let's sew this side seam. Okay. Oh, go back to my straight stitch. Okay. And one other tip is when you start sewing, I like to hold the thread that's going through the needle down just with one finger. When I start to stitch, I hold it down so that it doesn't get sucked in or unthreaded. See, I have a question. Oh, Carolyn's a pinner too. Okay, yes, your question about pre-washing fabric. You could pink the edges of your fabric when pre-washing. You could zigzag it. You could serge it. Kind of whatever's most convenient to you is what I would do. I usually zigzag the edges of my fabric before I pre-wash because then I can like use up thread that's in a bobbin or something that I don't need a lot of. But if you have your serger up and that's convenient, you can use that. I know a lot of people finish the edge of their fabric with a serger before pre-washing. I usually zigzag. And then I'll even zigzag with a really long stitch. And then if I want to, I can just take it out really easily after it's pre-washed. Okay. I'm gonna try to pay attention while I go around these curves. Sometimes it can be really tricky to keep an accurate seam allowance while you're stitching around a curve. So you just want to go a little bit more slowly. The beauty of these inseam pockets is that if you are off with your seam allowance a little bit, you won't be able to tell because the pockets are on the inside and it's not, crucial to the fit if you have a perfect 1/2 inch seam allowance around your pockets. So if you need help getting your fabric to turn around, you can also lift your presser foot a little bit and just move the fabric manually. Oh, Ellen's a rebel and never pins. I think I've heard it's faster to not pin, but I think I was just taught that way, so I always do it. Okay, let's see. I'm getting to that section where I have all my side seams, so I just want to make sure that I have everything pressed the way it should go. Okay, and then I'm just going to stitch right up to the previous stitching, and I just went one stitch past it. And then I turn and pivot. So you lift your presser foot with the needle down and you pivot your fabric. And then you hope that it's close to your 1/2 inch seam allowance. And then we'll just stitch right on down to the square, or where I marked with the double pins. Okay, and then I'm going to back stitch and then forward stitch a little bit and clip that. So the square marking is a recommendation for where you should stop stitching for the slit in the side of the skirt. If you're adjusting the length, you might want to baste this seam first and test how well you can move with wherever that stopping point is, because it is helpful, like for movement to have that slit in the skirt, and you don't want it to be too tight and like not able to walk around. All right, now drink water. Oh, okay. I have to remember to breathe and not talk too fast. Okay, I'm going to stitch the other side of the skirt and just put some pins in, again lining up the edges of the pocket. And let's see. Okay, show it to you again, just because sometimes helpful to see things twice. So here's the pocket. And I kind of like to use these long pins. I have for a long time because I think they're easier to pick up than short pins. So I'm going to put 2 pins over here for my stopping point. And these pins just have plastic heads, but you can get pins that have glass heads, and that's really convenient because then you can iron over it and not melt the head of the pin. Let's see. This pocket's being a little weird. Let's see. SK1978 is going to make the Lela skirt with some fabric from my shop. That's exciting. Wonder if it's the crinkle rayon I just sent out recently. I think that would make a really nice Lela skirt. Really nice for summer. Okay, I think I've got this pinned. Okay. I'm sitting on a stool, which is a very unusual way for me to sew. So again, just straight stitch. We're going to start at the top of the pocket. and back stitch. Whoa. I always go too fast on that back stitch and it scares me. Okay. And if you're coming in late, I already finished, or if I forgot to mention it, I'm not sure. I've already finished the curved edges of the pockets before we started. Because I finished the side seams along with the sides of the pocket. So it's just the kind of method of finishing seams that I find most efficient for this skirt. And again, going around the curve, sometimes I need to lift my presser foot a little bit and manually move the fabric around. Kind of pivot it with the needle down. And now I'm getting over to the skirt. So you kind of have to do this little curve like this and take your time. Oh, maybe I want one to stitch too far, but I think it should be okay. I always backstitch faster. Okay, so we have our side seams sewn, and now we want to find the front of the skirt. So the front of the skirt is 2 inches shorter than the back, the way it's designed. And we're going to press our pockets towards the front. So to do that, we want to just clip into the back seam allowance, just below the pocket. So my fabric scissors. These are not my preferred scissors. I can't find my preferred scissors right now. So I just want to very carefully snip in here. Okay. So here's my pocket. And then I just cut very carefully into the back there. And we're going to press the pocket towards the front of the skirt. And then we're going to press the seam open below the pocket. Okay. Also need to baste the top. Okay, so got my iron. Sorry, I was talking to myself right there. I forgot one step. I think we do that after. I haven't sewn this skirt in about a year, so it's a little bit unfamiliar. So at the top here, we're going to need to, I'm just going to reference my instructions for how to do this properly. Maybe I was supposed to sew the top of that pocket. No, I'm doing it right. Okay. Yeah, I'm doing it right. So after we press it, we're going to baste the top of the pocket to the top of the skirt. Sorry for that double check. That's what live sewing is for, right? So you can kind of see right here, I have, this is the top of my skirt and the top of my pocket. And I'm just going to put some pins in so that I can baste that in place. And I'll just do a little basting line right across the top. And down here, we've pressed the seam open below the pocket, and then along the pocket, the seam is pressed towards the front. So we will repeat that for the other side. Let's see. Just keeping track of which is the front side, which is the back side. I'm just going to press the edge of this pocket first. When I did the zigzag, it kind of made the fabric curl up a little bit. But it's okay. So I'm matching up these side seams with the pocket, and I'm going to put a pin in here to hold them together. And remember, our pocket should sit about 1/8 of an inch lower than the top of the skirt. Okay. Okay. Let's move this away. Okay. So I'm going to change to a basting stitch, and that is just a really long straight stitch. So basting stitches can be used just to hold things in place, or they can be used to make gathers. Or they can help you manipulate the curve of a fabric, which is how we do the curved hem in this skirt. So just going to baste the top of the pocket to the top of the skirt. And so here we're using the basting just to hold things in place. Okay. Okay, now we have the skirt part done, which is pretty exciting. So here's our little skirt, and now we're going to do the waistband. Let me, oof. All right, so I have 2 waistband pieces. There's a back and a front. I kind of like that there's a back and a front, because then if you decide you need to take in the side seams, it's easy to take it in at the skirt too. Oh, Karina just started a Lela skirt last night. That's awesome. The video will be saved in my channel too if you need to go back to the beginning. And it should populate with captions too if you need those. So here is my front skirt. And the pattern has a little marking for the buttonhole. And the buttonhole is used to put the drawstring in. So let me show you this finished one. So here's the finished waistband, and you just put the drawstring through the buttonhole. It's kind of optional. I like to stitch the buttonhole even if I'm not sure that I'm going to do a drawstring, because after you put the waistband together, it's basically impossible to add a buttonhole without taking everything apart. So if you're not really sure, I do recommend doing a buttonhole, and you don't have to cut it open. So what I like to do is you want to put some interfacing on the back behind where you're going to put your buttonholes. And then to mark where the buttonholes go, I just cut out the square from my pattern piece, and I put it over my fabric and then draw in with a marking pen or chalk where you want the buttonhole to go. So I have my buttonhole foot, and let's see. So we'll move to that foot. And then this is about a 1/2 inch button in the back of the buttonhole foot. This is just, an automatic buttonhole. I really like this style of buttonhole foot because it's just so easy to do. So I also have a piece of tracing paper, and I'm going to put this underneath my fabric. So you can kind of see I've marked my buttonholes on there, and I'm going to slide the fabric and tracing paper underneath the presser foot. And it is a smart idea to test out buttonholes on a scrap of fabric first. So I just want to get this lined up. Try to keep it going straight. Okay. And then there's this little bar that you need to lower that goes behind kind of this nub in the buttonhole foot. And that is going to tell the machine when to go forward again. So I guess I should do a whole video about buttonholes, but these are pretty fast. You just kind of sit back. So the good thing about testing a buttonhole on, oh, let's see, I think I got caught up. So the tracing paper can help feed the fabric through and give it a little more stability. This actually got caught up a little bit at one point. So it's kind of annoying. So I don't know if you can see where, yeah, like it stopped moving the fabric through and it got caught. So it made a whole bunch of extra stitches. Theoretically, the paper is supposed to help move the fabric through. So, and then there are other like wash away stabilizers that you can use too. That should help do that. Okay, so sometimes I do, if a buttonhole messes up, I will take out the buttonhole and restitch it, which I don't like to do because it's kind of not great for the fabric, but it's usually fine, like as long as you haven't cut open that buttonhole yet. It's usually not a problem. Okay. Maybe if I go more slowly while I stitch this buttonhole, it'll do it better. Oh, your first buttonhole did it too. Yeah, I know a lot of people have problems with buttonholes. I've had varying experience, kind of, let's see, depending on the machine I've used. So I think it's definitely worth practicing, and I really prefer the kind of machine that has this one-step buttonhole, which means you just start going and it does all sides of the buttonhole. There are some machines where you have to tell it like to stop and start for each side of the buttonhole, and I think that's really hard to use because there's just more opportunity for human error. So I'm going to watch this buttonhole carefully. If it gets caught up, you can kind of pull the fabric a little bit. Okay. Okay, and then it will just stop when it's done stitching. So that one was much better. And I think I'm going to restitch. Yeah, so Karina's asking if it depends on how fast you go. Yeah, I think probably I just went a little too fast on that first buttonhole. I don't know if you can see. I think it's a little too hard to see because my thread matches, but yeah, it's probably better to go slower in general. Oh, yeah, yeah, the four-step buttonhole I think is really tricky. When I was younger, I sewed on my grandma's Singer swing line, and I just did not know how to do the buttonholes on it, and I think I just wasn't using the correct attachments, so um, I ended up having a lot of really wonky looking buttonholes, and I would just do it manually with a zigzag stitch, which is an option. I think it doesn't look quite as good as the one-step buttonhole, but it is an option. And also, like, instead of unpicking the whole buttonhole, if you just have one part that's a little off, you can just unpick that one part and then go back with a zigzag stitch that's really tight and stitch over that one part, which is probably what I should have done for this if I had thought of it before. So if you want to learn more about different ways to do buttonholes, Melly Sews, who is here on YouTube, she did a video recently with I think 3 different methods for sewing a buttonhole. She's really great, so I recommend checking out that video, because I think she shows you how to stitch it by hand, how to do it like one-step buttonhole, and then how to do it with a zigzag. Okay. So it'd be better if I had my little tiny seam ripper for this. So I'm making this skirt for my sister-in-law because she's been saying for years that she wanted a Lela skirt, and like before it was a Lela skirt and it was the baseball skirt, she wanted it. So when I decided that I was going to sew one, I offered to make it for her. So that's why I wanted to have a nice buttonhole and not have a wonky, you know, big lump of thread in there. So I'm going to try to take this out as quickly and carefully as possible. Sometimes it's easier to do it on the wrong side. And if you have the tissue paper under there, sometimes you can just get the hook of your seam ripper right under the stitches and run it along the tissue paper and take it out pretty quickly. So since we're talking about the buttonholes and the drawstring, my favorite drawstring for the Lela skirt is a cotton twill tape, which is what I have in here. So it's just really soft twill tape. It has a little bit of texture to it. You can find it in most stores. They have like beige usually and black and navy. So I used to have a lot of it on hand, but I don't have any right now. So you can use like the cotton twill tape or some other kind of cord. That would be really nice for a drawstring. Something that's, you know, kind of pliable so you can tie it into a knot and that washes well, isn't too thick. So let's see. This is kind of a mess. But it happens to everybody. You sometimes don't get your perfect buttonhole in the first try. Okay. Or perfect whatever. I think the other day I was sewing things in upside down. Okay. Yeah, so my rule of thumb for if I'm going to redo something or not is if it's going to bother me later. So if I've made a mistake and I'm just really debating whether I want to unpick it and redo it, I think about like, okay, when I'm wearing this, am I going to look down and be bugged by it. And if the answer is yes, then I will redo it. But if it's something that I really won't think about or notice, then I will just leave it. Okay. I'm almost done taking this out. It's a little bit dark in here. It would help to have a direct light, but making do in the kitchen. So, as I mentioned earlier, my sewing room is upstairs in my house, and it's about 80 degrees today, 84. So it's just too hot up there. I'm already like sweating down here. Okay, I'm gonna restitch this buttonhole. This fabric is a little bit worse for wear. That would be a reason not to take out a buttonhole. Yeah, so yeah, I don't know if I ever have a project where I don't have to use my seam ripper at least once. And I've been sewing for 25 years, so mistakes happen. That's why you have the seam ripper. It, you know, you redo it. Okay, just gonna get this lined up, and I'm gonna go a little bit more slowly, not get too distracted. Okay, have this down. Oof. So I'm just gonna wash it more carefully this time and watch to see if things get caught up. Okay, yay! It's done. All right. So when you get to the end of the buttonhole, it should just, the needle should just go up and down a few times really slowly to let you know that it's done. Okay, so when you're done stitching it, you just kind of hold onto the stitching and gently tear away the tissue paper. Let's see, question about what machine I upgraded to. I used to do a lot of quilting. My machine was great. So I actually got a Janome Memory Craft as my new machine. So it's a major upgrade. And the Memory Craft is actually kind of specialized for quilting. So it's it has an extra large opening right here. Lots of quilting stitches. So, and the opening's large, so you can do machine quilting. Actually, I don't know. It's so hot. I don't know if I've done machine quilting on that yet, but it's a really great machine. It has really nice stitches. It has a lot of features that I didn't know I would like. Like it has an automatic thread cutter. Yeah, it has a button to raise and lower the presser foot. So just a lot of things that I've gotten really used to. So it was a very nice machine. I found one where it was the floor model and got it on sale, which was really nice. Maybe I'll do a video about that machine sometime. All right, so I've gone back to my regular presser foot, and I'm going to go back to my straight stitch, and we're going to stitch the side seams of the waistband. So here's the waistband, and I'm going to stitch the short end over here and then the short end over here. All right, I feel like we were doing those buttonholes forever. That has been on my kind of back of the mind list of videos to do, is one about buttonholes. But Melly Sews just did hers a few weeks ago. So, and I wasn't going to do it about like all those different ways of doing buttonholes. So I saw hers and was like, oh, she's already taken care of it. Everyone should just watch hers. because she'll show you lots of different options. Okay. Uh-oh. Oh, my buttonhole lever was down. Okay. So I'm back to straight stitch, 1/2 inch seam allowance, and just stitch this down. Okay. And then we'll stitch this other side. So the way I open my buttonholes is I use my little thread snips, and I just fold the buttonhole in half and then cut it with my thread snips. But I don't know where my thread snips are right now. There's somewhere in the sewing room, probably under some fabric. I really like the thread snips because they're very sharp, so they're very good for clipping curves, for clipping the seam allowance, you know, like I did for the pockets earlier, because they're very sharp and very accurate. So these big scissors, just you can't cut right at the end, so you can't get as close as with thread snips. Okay. Oh. And then these aren't as sharp, they're not as good, they're kind of cheap. Okay, so let's get our ironing board back. And get the iron over here. So we're just going to press the seam open on both sides. So this little ironing board, it probably belonged to one of my great aunts or my grandma. And I was visiting my dad a few weeks ago, and he says, "Oh, do you need an ironing board?" And I said, "No, I don't need an ironing board." And then he showed this to me, and I said, "Oh, yes, I do want that. It's so cute." So now I'm just going to fold this in half with the wrong sides together. And you want to get your, let's see, we'll put this down. It might be a little better. So I'm going to fold this in half, wrong sides together, and you just want to line up that raw edge, and we're going to press a crease, and this crease is the top of your waistband. Yeah, that's a little bit better. Turn on some lights. So we're just going to go all the way around. Yeah, so the fabric doesn't look amazing where I unpicked that buttonhole. I think it would have been better just to unpick part of it and then zigzag over, but we'll just leave it for now, or leave it forever, I guess. So this waistband, or this pattern, is designed for 1 1/4 inch wide elastic. If you don't have 1 1/4 inch wide elastic, but you want to substitute like a 1 inch elastic, then you can just cut your waistband pattern piece a little bit shorter. You would just cut it shorter by 1/2 inch. Okay, so we have our waistband, and it's just creased at the top. And now I want to do a little top stitching. So I talked about this on Instagram the other day. When I sew elastic waistbands, I think it's really tricky to sew on top of the elastic. So I like to sew, do some top stitching, but not sew right on the elastic. So you get that look of the top stitching, but without the difficulty of stitching on top of the elastic. Water break. So I'm going to try to stitch just 1/8 of an inch away from the folded edge. So I'm going to do a straight stitch and make it 3 millimeters long. For top stitching, I like to do just a little bit longer, because you don't really need it to be as secure as your other stitches. And it just kind of, it looks nice that way. So I just want to make sure I have it right side up. Some machines, when you're stitching, the top side of the stitching looks better than the bottom side of the stitching. So you might just want to consider that when you do top stitching. So, okay, so that's about 1/8. And I'm just going to stitch all the way around. Let's see, here's a question. Okay, so I'm using a rayon fabric for this skirt. I bought this in the downtown LA fashion district, which is an amazing resource for fabric. Yeah, they just have so much fabric. And this was from a little store. I think it was from Angel Textiles, which is on Maple. I have a blog post that's kind of out of date that talks about fabric shopping in Los Angeles, which I've been meaning to update it for like the last year. But yeah, I guess maybe sometime later this year I'll update it. It's really sad not to be able to go down there right now, and I feel like I've seen a lot of changes over the last few years. And some of the stores that were on my guide are no longer there. So hopefully people are still going to be there, you know, when it opens up again. Okay. All right, I'm getting close to the beginning. So if you're not sure like where 1/8 of an inch is on your sewing machine, I recommend testing your top stitching on a scrap of fabric, and then you can measure it and just kind of figure out where on the guide or like where on your presser foot you can like eyeball a guide for 1/8 of an inch. Sometimes 1/4 inch feet will have also 1/8 of an inch guide. You might also experiment with moving your needle to get it to like a very accurate 1/8 of an inch, but you don't have to be super, super accurate. With this one, there's a little bit of wiggle room for your elastic to be in there. Okay, so we have that top stitched, and now pretty sure we're ready to stitch it to our skirt. So just gonna consult my instructions just to make sure. That's top stitched. Yes. Okay, good. I'm remembering what I wrote. All right, so what you might want to do is, so you have your side seams, you know where those are, but you might also want to mark your center front and center back with some pins, just so you know you get those lined up with your skirt and your waistband. So to do that, you would just fold it in half. So here I have the side seams held together, and then this is halfway around. So this would be my center back because there are no buttonholes. And so I'm just going to put a pin where that fold is. And then I'll go to the other side. And the center front should be right in the middle of those buttonholes, hopefully. So I'll just put a pin here too. And then you can do the same on your skirt. So Again, you want to be careful of what your front and back is because you want to make sure that you stitch the buttonholes to the front side of the skirt. Okay. So the front side is the side where we pressed our pockets towards, and it's the side that's a little bit shorter. Okay. So we'll just put these pins in, and then we're going to put these right sides together, and the right side of your waistband is the one with the buttonholes. So let's put those buttonholes next to the right side of our center front. And so I have my 2 pins lined up here. That's my center front, and I'll just take one out and then take the other one and keep those together. And try not to get all twisted. So then I'll match a side seam to a side seam. Okay, and then maybe just put one more pin in the middle. You don't need a whole lot, and these things should really match up pretty equally if they were cut correctly. So right now, my cat is upstairs in the very hot sewing room, sleeping on top of the cutting table, which has become his new favorite place to sleep. It's very inconvenient for me because he just wants to sit on everything I'm working on, and it's making it impossible to cut anything out. But I think he likes it because it's up high and he can see out the window and kind of see what's going on. For a while, he was sleeping in this basket on the floor, and that was great for me because he was totally out of the way. So it's very inconvenient that he's now decided he likes this top of the cutting table, which is my workspace. All right, let's stitch this together. So I'm going to start near the center back, and I'm going to leave an opening of about 2 inches. So it doesn't have to be exactly at the center back. You can again put in 2 pins as a reminder of like where to stop when you come back around. So again, I'm going to do a straight stitch, and I'll back stitch, and the 1/2 inch seam allowance. Okay, yeah, so you just want to make sure you have your raw edges together. Try not to stitch on a part of the skirt that you don't want to stitch on. And we're stitching through both layers of the waistband and through the skirt. So we were talking about this fabric earlier. So it's a rayon fabric. It's pretty lightweight. It's opaque, which is always really nice for skirts, so you don't see through it. And then it has some nice drapes, so it's not too heavy. Like you wouldn't want to make this skirt out of a denim because once you have that gathered waist, it'll just be too stiff around your waist and really uncomfortable. So a rayon crepe, chambray, kind of medium to lightweight cottons and linens all work really well. So my fabric is starting to get pretty frayed up at the top, just because it's been handled a bunch during the sewing process. But I didn't want to finish those seams earlier because it would cause extra bulk to have all of those seams finished separately. So I'm actually going to be finishing them together after we put the elastic in. Oh, come on. The machine got caught up on something. So, getting close to where I started, and I just want to leave a gap. Okay, that's pretty good. Little back stitch. So I've stitched all the way around, and then I've left an opening, and through this opening is where we're going to put our elastic. So here's my elastic and a safety pin, and again, this is 1 1/4 inch elastic. Elastic is one of the things that I like to buy in bulk. So, you know, if you have like go-to sizes or patterns that you like to use, I would recommend buying in bulk. So put a safety pin on the end of the elastic, and then we're going to insert it into our waistband casing. And you just push the fabric over the safety pin and then pull the fabric over. So I'm just gonna do it all the way around. So what I recommend for the sizing is before you cut your elastic, put it around your waist, and you can put a pin or safety pin in it and kind of feel, see how it feels, see if it's comfortable. Stand up, sit down. I think some people like their elastic tighter than other people. I kind of like it on the less tight side. So do that, then you're going to want to have like about a 1/2 inch overlap of the elastic. So, you know, cut it like 1/2 inch longer than what you want it to be finished. And then insert your elastic like we're doing right now. And after you insert it, I recommend that you try it on again. So you can just overlap the ends and then put the safety pin through it. So it's, you know, just a temporary hold. Okay, I'm at one of those side seams. It's a little bit hard. Just kind of have to open it up to get your safety pin through. All right. So yeah, definitely try it on again before you close up the hole in the waistband, because sometimes you'll just, you know, estimate wrong how you want the elastic, how long you want the elastic, and if it's too tight or too loose, and you don't test it before closing up this hole, you're going to have a lot more work to redo it. So that's my big tip for elastic waistbands. Uh-oh, here's my second one. Don't pull too hard, because the end of the elastic will go inside the casing. It's hard to get out. Lessons in what not to do. Okay. Yeah. All right. Yeah. So you could probably, I don't know, like pin this end to your garment so it doesn't go inside. Let's keep pushing it through. All right. Okay. So here you have your two ends, and now this is when you'd want to pin it together with your safety pin and try it on. This is for my sister-in-law, so she's not here. So I'm not going to do that. I just estimated how long to make it. And hopefully she likes it. Yeah. Do you guys sew for other people? I don't sew for other people that much, so I mostly sew for myself. So sometimes you're just not sure like how much other people are going to appreciate all the work you put in, you know? So you also want to make sure that you don't have your elastic twisted inside the casing. So just go around, feel it, make sure that it's flat in the casing. So then you kind of pull it out. I have a pin in here, and I've overlapped the ends about 1/2 inch. And I'm going to set my machine to a zigzag stitch. You can also do a straight stitch. That's fine. And I'm going to stitch a little box around. So I'm going to go down, over, up, over, and then do an X in the middle. And that should hold it really securely. Okay, pull this to the side. So, you know, we were talking about fabric earlier. One of the things I love about the LA Fashion District is that you can buy all different kinds of elastic in bulk. So there are stores that I have in my guide where they just have tons of different kinds of elastic, and you know, you can just buy yards of it at a time. So that's what I usually do when I stock up on elastic. I'll just go and buy, like 5 to 10 yards at a time. And it's really affordable. And I also like that it's not lots of extra packaging, so it seems a little more earth-friendly that way. Yeah, I feel like I usually overlap this more than ½ inch actually, but I think we should be fine. I'll just stitch over it a few times. And this stitching doesn't have to be really pretty or anything because you're never going to see it again. So just trim those up. And then we'll put it inside our casing. I guess I should show you what it looks like. So here's my stitching, zigzags, little box. Oh yeah, so Carolyn's saying it would be intimidating to go into places in the Fashion District. It is kind of at first. It's a whole experience. There's a lot of activity going on. It can just be really crowded, but it's really fun. But it is intimidating, and you kind of have to get used to it and go a few times or just kind of get the confidence. There are a few places that are, what's the word, wholesale only, but a lot that are just open to the public. And you know, people are generally pretty helpful. And they want you to buy things. They want to sell you stuff. So, so yeah, it's fun. It's a great experience. So now I've switched to straight stitch, and I'm just going to close up that gap that we left in the skirt and waistband. Okay. All right, so that gap is all closed up. And now we're going to finish this edge. So I'm going to do my zigzag stitch at 2 millimeters. Susan's going to sew for her daughter. That's so nice. Yeah, I often I'll sew for my mom usually if I'm going to sew for anybody else. We're pretty similar in size, except that she's shorter. So I'll often just give her things that I've made because I know they'll probably fit her. It is much easier if someone is similar in size to you. So yeah, so I'm just zigzagging through both layers of the waistband and through the skirt. And I'm going to trim some of these threads away because it's all messy. Oh, I have another drink of water. I have to be careful. So as you go around, you'll probably need to scoot your elastic and pull the fabric flat a little bit. You don't really want to pull the fabric, just adjust it so that it's flat. Oh. And more of these threads. So if I was using a serger, the serger would just cut away these threads. But I thought it would be nice to show you how to sew this only on a conventional machine. As I know a lot of people especially when they start sewing, don't have a serger. So I'm just cutting some threads to make it a little cleaner. Okay. And again, you can do a serger for this. I'm doing a zigzag, or you can do another overcast stitch that's on your machine. I have another video that's about seam finishes. So some fabrics are more prone to fraying than others. This one kind of frays a lot. This is kind of thin. You could do a bias binding finish over this. That might be a little thick because it's gathered. Just trim this a little bit. Okay. Okay, we're almost back at the front. Come around. Okay. All right, so this seam is finished. There's still a bunch of threads there that need to be cut off, but that's done. So now this stuff is optional. I sometimes do it, I sometimes don't. And this is top stitching again. So you can see there's kind of a little bit of extra wiggle room in here for the elastic, which I really like because sometimes I feel like waistband casings can be too tight, and when it's too tight, then your elastic gets curved, and I really don't like that. So I like to have a little bit of extra room in my casing. But to tighten it up, you can do another line of top stitching just along here. And so kind of like with the finishing of the raw edge, you'll want to just adjust the fabric around. So we're not going to stitch directly on the elastic. We're just going to stitch in between the seam and the elastic. Also, you can press the seam down towards the skirt, but no, I don't think we really need to. So I'm just going to kind of scoot my elastic up into the top of the casing, so as far away from the waistline seam as possible. And then I'm going to do a straight stitch at 3 millimeters and sew this little line of top stitching. And it's really decorative, just right in between the elastic and that waistband seam. Okay. And, you know, don't worry too much about perfection with this, because when this is gathered, you're not going to be able to really see the stitching very closely. So it's not like you're, you know, top stitching a pair of jeans pockets. It doesn't have to be perfect. But kind of from a distance, you'll be able to tell that there's some top stitching there, and it just tightens up that waistband casing a little bit. There we go. But again, this is optional. You can also do some top stitching. You could do a stitch in the ditch at the side seams, and that would be just to keep your elastic from twisting. So you'd want to even out the fabric in the front and the back. So get your elastic really centered in the casing. And then you stitch in the ditch, which means you stitch right inside the seam line, and you would stitch right through the elastic, and it's kind of an invisible stitch, and it just holds that elastic in place to prevent it from twisting later on. Okay. So as I'm going, I'm just kind of moving my fabric and making sure that I'm stitching flat. I don't want to stitch any wrinkles in here. Okay. Oof. So this is really my favorite skirt to wear in the summer and spring. I designed it like in the heat of summer one year. I think the side vents make it really kind of breezy and comfortable to wear, so you get a little bit of airflow through, but it's also really easy to style in a way that doesn't look too casual. So I have a couple of blog posts about styling it, and you can find those in the sew along. If you look down in the show notes, there's a link to the sew along for this skirt. You can check out both of those posts. All right. And then also in that sew along, there is a blog post about stitching the waistband casing. So if you want a refresher on that, it wouldn't be real-time sewing, it'd be a little more organized probably. Okay, so we're almost done here. Okay, and then you just want to trim those threads. Now, our last one, I already do have a video about sewing the curved hem, but only an hour and 20 minutes in, and I don't have to go to the bathroom yet, so I think we could go ahead and do this curved hem. So I have already basted a 1/4 inch away from the curved hem, which I think you could see better on this side. So sewing a curved hem can be kind of tricky, but basting it really, really helps. So I'm going to turn this inside out and stand up. Maybe you can see my ironing board a little better. So I'll put this skirt over here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to press up along the basting stitches. So just use my iron and I'll fold right along that line of basting stitches. And again, I basted at 1/4 inch. I think my iron needs to wake up a little bit. So just go around. You know, the front and back of the skirt are the easiest because they're straight. And then it's really just this little curved end, actually. I can go flat on this, I think that's better. So just press along here. And my basting kind of already gathered in a little bit. So it pressed pretty flat for me. And then I'm going to fold up again, just another 1/4 inch all the way around. And I like to do the straight parts first, and then I get to the curved parts. And you can put pins in here if you want to. So I'll just kind of with my fingers, I roll it. Oops, and then press it down. And sometimes it works just fine. Like this fabric is pretty easy to manipulate. But if you're having problems with it, you can use a pin and just pick up the line of basting stitches and gather it. You just pull the basting stitch and it will help manipulate that fabric into the curved shape. So just want to go all the way around and press everything in. So this shape of the curved hem, oh, let's see, can I use a bias strip to hem the skirt if I'm using a stiffer fabric? Yeah, I think that would work. So you could sew, yeah, just like you would do a neckline binding. That should work totally fine. Yeah, especially if you were using a stiffer fabric. I mean, I would be careful not to use something too stiff because you don't want it to be uncomfortable at the waist. But if it's, you know, kind of like a medium weight linen or cotton, I think a bias binding should work fine. Yeah. Okay. So let's see. The other thing that we need to do is at this split opening. And I think in my other video, it might show this a little bit better, but because I have an overhead shot. At the split opening, let me see. We're gonna have, how do I explain this? Okay. It'll be folded to a point and then become unfolded where the fabric is finished. So in my blog post about sewing the curved hem, I believe there are some photographs of that, and it'll be a lot easier to understand from those photos than from what I'm saying right now. Let me try to show you. So yeah, just let me know if there are any more questions. This shape of the curved hem is the original that the pattern came with. So it's just like a little bit of curve at the edges of the fabric. And then view B has a more exaggerated curved hem. And that's actually my favorite now, is view B in a midi length. I have it in a linen, and it's really just my favorite skirt to wear. So, and then view C is a straight edge on the hem with a split at the side too. Okay. Let's see. Yeah, so this fabric is actually pretty cooperative, which is nice. And I don't worry too much about being super exact with like the 1/2 inch hem allowance, because it's a curve. I think as long as it's close enough, it's going to be fine. Okay, so we are very, very nearly done. All we have to do is stitch down this hem. So this is really just like an hour and a half to sew this skirt, which is pretty amazing. Very good if it's super hot in your sewing room and you are just like sweating buckets, but you still want to sew. Just sew something really fast. Okay. I think I have that pressed all the way around. Okay. Oof. It's hot. I'm gonna have a big glass of ice water when I'm done. Maybe some wine. Okay, so I'm gonna use, again, the straight stitch with the 3.0 length. So I usually start near one of these split edges. Let me see if I can show you. That was kind of, I don't know. Definitely check out that blog post if you want more info on sewing the curved hem, because I have some good photos in there. So I'm going to start near one of these splits, and as you sew it, you pivot around that corner for the split, and that's going to help stabilize that area. So I'm going to sew kind of just less than 1/4 of an inch so that I can stitch as close to that folded edge as possible. And I usually like to start on the back to kind of hide that start and stop. I'd rather have the start and stop of the stitching be on the back than on the front. Let's see. So I'm just going to stitch up to a little bit above where we stopped stitching for the side seam. Lift my presser foot, turn, and then I'm going to stitch across perpendicular to that side seam. And you can count your stitches to figure out if you're doing it an even amount. Let's see. Probably could have done a better job ironing this. I think I'm definitely cutting some corners because I'm trying not to take too much time and it's so hot. You know? Okay. And then this is pretty straightforward. You can kind of feel with your fingers where that folded edge is to make sure that you're stitching close to that folded edge. If you really want to make sure that you're stitching next to the folded edge, you could stitch from the wrong side. But like I mentioned earlier, sometimes machines have prettier stitching on the right side. So most of the time I like to stitch with right side up, but it kind of depends what machine I'm using and how confident I am that the stitching will look good. Okay, so here my basting stitches kind of gathered a little too much, so I'm just gonna clip that basting stitch to make sure I get a flat hem. Okay, to fluff this out, I'm just getting to the other side of the skirt with the split for the side seam. So do the same as the other side, stitch up a little bit past that opening for the split and then turn it. Bye, Susan. Thank you for joining. Oh, it's dinner time on the East Coast. Okay. And then stitch across that side seam, pivot and turn. Lift the presser foot and pivot. Pivot's the same as turn, right? All right. And then we're just going to stitch. Okay. stitch around the side. So we're almost done. Again, there's a link down in the show notes for the pattern. It comes in sizes 0 to 32. And there's a video about selecting your size. So it goes up to a 58-inch hip. And there are 3 views and 2 lengths, and you can mix and match all the pocket styles and hem views for 18 different combinations. So it's really versatile, really quick to sew, so really great for the summer because it's comfortable, and you won't have to spend too much time in a hot sewing room. And you still get something new to wear. So getting close to the end. Let me know. Let's see, I'm going to clip this seam again. Yeah, let me know in the comments if you enjoyed the live sew along and if you would like to see more of them. Yeah, it's been fun to have you and to sew live. And if you have questions even after the live, you can just put them in the comments and I will get back to you as soon as I can. Okay. Oh, there it is. We're all done. Oh, hi, Alicia. This is a rayon fabric. It's very flowy. Oh, thank you, Carolyn. I hope you love your skirt. Okay, this one is all done. I'm gonna have to like clip my threads and make sure I did everything properly. And then I'll send it off to my sister-in-law. Thank you guys so much for joining. There are links down in the show notes to the sew along. This video will be saved for future viewing, and it should have captions in it for future reference. So links to the pattern, links to the shop, and if you want to support the channel, you can buy me a coffee at the link down below. If you want to just donate, I think that's it. Yeah, just let me know if you have any questions. I hope you're all doing well and staying safe. Bye.